Sean McDermott said, you know what, coach? Not necessarily all his fault. Take a listen.
We got to spend a lot of time looking at this thing and figuring out what's going on and fixing it. It was too hard tonight on our quarterback, and it doesn't need to be that hard all the time where he's having to run out of the pocket. Their pressure, I thought at times we picked up the pressure, and then at other times the pocket was getting affected early. So the Russian coverage, as you know, we talk a lot about that, and it was disrupting our offense.
Coach, blitz on 56% of his dropbacks, his highest since 2021. How much of this loss is on Josh Allen, and what do you think of McDermott's quotes?
Yeah, I agree with McDermott. It's not all on Josh Allen, and Buffalo's run defense has been poor. They're 30th in the NFL, 28th going into the game, 30th after the game, and Bijan Robinson rushes for 160. He has the longest rush of the season. And then they give up 10 completions to Drake London. Mm-hmm. So there's that issue. And then on the flip side of it, Atlanta's pass defense is #1 in the league. So you're going into a situation where you don't stop the run very well. You're playing the best passing defense in the league. Not only that, but they historically bring a significant amount of pressure. And
Excuse me.
It's frustrating in the same way I'm sure Dak feels week in and week out, where he's got to play Superman ball, and that can be okay for a while, and he did a really good job of managing that last season and keeping the turnovers down. But when every single game it's got to be like that, then eventually these turnovers are going to continue to come. And when you look at the turnovers from the game, the first turnover didn't lead to points, and the second turnover, they were already behind by 10, so it would have been just to get a touchdown in order to kick an onside kick. The game at that point was already out of hand. Josh Allen has responsibility, but there are other inherent issues that Buffalo needs to address.
Yeah, look, I'm not absolving Allen at all. I've already talked about how, I would have dropped him on Mahomes Mountain. But I put more of this on the offensive line and the play calling. So James Cook was not in the game. James Cook averaged over 5 yards a carry last night. They had 9 third down plays. He wasn't on the field for any of them. All right. Yep. They had one fourth down play.
Because he's not their receiving back.
Right,
so
but also
happens to Derrick Henry a lot too.
A little decoy.
Sure.
That's my thing. Every time he's not on the field. To me, that's ridiculous. So I don't like that play calling. And then, Coach, we talked a little bit about the O-line. He was pressured on 47% of his dropbacks. That's the most since 2020 in the playoff game. Yeah. And then he was sacked 4 times. That's the most in more than 2 years. So I just think he rushed it, because of the pass rush. He did end up, I thought that first interception, he kind of rushed and got frazzled. But not absolving him, but there were a lot of other factors where I do think McDermott made a little sense.
Listen, all that's true. And look, the only reason this team is considered a great team, potentially, and has Super Bowl aspirations, because of that player. Mm-hmm. I think he's the second best player in the entire league. Everybody thinks he's at least one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the entire league. Some people argue he's the best. But last night specifically, Atlanta was on fire early, and then, they almost put the game away in the final play of the first half, but going for that cost them points, and then they were stuck in the mud the whole second half. The Bills had the ball 3 times in the second half, down 7. Go score to take the lead or get a field goal to really put pressure on them. They only moved the ball once. The other times were 3 and outs. The one time they did move the ball, Josh did that kind of ridiculous push pass on 4th and 2. And here is my frustration. Brew, you know how I've said the best life in sports is being the 17th best player in the NBA? Somewhere 17 to 25, where when you're great, you get all the love. Right. And when you're not great, people are like, the best player on the team needed to be better. It feels to me like Josh Allen, even though he's the defending MVP, lives in that world narratively. When the Bills look awesome, we never come on and be like, man, that offensive line is just the best. James, it is Josh Allen is playing the position as well as anybody who's ever played it. It's that he is neck and neck or is past Patrick or all these things. And when they lose in a game that he did not play well, again, I think it's rare that he doesn't play well, but he did not play well. They scored 14 points. We're saying there's a bit of he needs, like, the rest of the team let him down. And I just don't think, I do think they are a flawed roster, and I do think they need to improve on things you're talking about to win a championship. But I think last night, he was part of the problem.
He was.
I understand that, but we're talking about a running back that had 160 yards. That's not even counting what he had in receiving yards.
240.
We're talking about a wide receiver that had 10 catches. They weren't able to affect Michael Penix at all, so he didn't have any turnovers. He was sacked a couple times, but that's radically different. Atlanta was coming off a bye, so I would imagine the blitz package was more extensive than maybe what they would have gotten in a traditional week. So I'm not trying to take him off the hook, but I do agree that there are other systemic problems with this team that he can't overcome every week by being Superman.
That's totally fair.
Last year when the Bills lost their second game, they rattled off 7 straight wins, so maybe they get on a roll. Steelers are 4-1 and in first place. They headed to Cincinnati to play Flacco and the Bengals. Mike Tomlin, who is a fan of 40-year-old quarterbacks, not too happy that the Browns traded Flacco to the Bengals. Take a listen.
It was shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us, because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a division opponent that's hurting in that area. But that's just my personal feelings.
Your reaction to Mike Tomlin.
Look, I love Tomlin, calling out, naming names and the whole thing, giving his view. But I don't blame the Browns at all. A player they're done with, Joe Flacco, that they can get a 5th-round pick for, sure, they're going to do it. And if I'm the Browns, I couldn't care less whether Pittsburgh or Cincinnati wins the division. It's not going to be us. Our season's over. We're looking at our 2 young quarterbacks. So I get where Tomlin's like, you making it a little tougher on us.
Are you?
But, well, look.
I guess.
Flacco's better than Jake Brown.
I wasn't last year. I'm saying Jake Browning was hot for a little second last year.
2 years.
Flacco could probably have 3 or 4 good games in him, and maybe one will be against Pittsburgh. But no, I get where Tomlin's coming from. I like his energy, but I got no problems with what the Browns did.
Mike's been there a long time. I can't remember press conferences where he called out specific people.
Yeah.
Like, this is so out of character. But I absolutely understand where he's coming from, because they've got to play Cincinnati, twice now? And before they had to play Cincinnati with one situation that wasn't very good for Cincinnati. But you throw Flacco in the mix. Flacco's a little bit like Jameis Winston. If he catches fire with those offensive weapons, he can hang 30 on anybody. On any given day, that player with all those other pieces, and they could disrupt the whole way that division unfolds by trading that quarterback. So I see why he's frustrated with it.
I just want more of this. I want more on-the-record coach and executive criticism of each other.
Love it.
And Tomlin has the gravitas and his team's winning and the track record that he can do it. Like, you saw Brian Dable, you weren't here. You'd have loved this, coach.
Okay.
Brian Dable last week, getting ready to play the Eagles, he was asked about A.J. Brown and being unhappy. And he starts off with the regular pablum. He's like, yeah, listen, they have a lot of good players. That's a good problem to have. And he's like, but if you watch the film, A.J.'s open a lot. Really trying to mix stir it up. So but that is a little more typical than this is a la Pat Riley to Danny Ainge, just not as caustic, so I loved it. I thought it was great.
Brian's was a little more subtle.
Yeah, Brian was more subtle, and he's not naming a name. Him saying Andrew Berry was pretty good.
Flacco 11-11 against Tomlin. So
yeah,
a little bit stressed out. They play on Thursday. Maybe this will be interesting.
That would be funny if they win.
Finally, Penn
for
State
the Ravens,
preparing for Iowa in their first game without Coach James Franklin, who was fired after losing to Oregon, and then he lost to UCLA, and then he lost to Northwestern. He's owed $49 million. It's the second largest buyout ever. We had this graphic before we were previewing the Oregon game, that although Franklin had been a really good coach, Against ranked opponents, he wasn't good. Against top 10, he was worse. And against top 5, he was even worse at 1-15. Ohio State and Michigan, 4-17. So do you agree with Penn State's decision to move on from James Franklin?
No. And I think Penn State doesn't necessarily understand who they are without, it's weird to say without Joe Paterno because he was there for 50 years. But Penn State's not Alabama and they're not Ohio State, and really those are the only two schools that are Alabama and Ohio State where it's like we're actually SBOB every year, and I have seen at varying levels, Michigan thought we're too good, like Lloyd Carr. You want to one championship with us, but we're Michigan. We're supposed to win a bunch, and you're really not. You're a great program, but you're not supposed to win 10. And they were in the wilderness for 15 years. My school, Syracuse, was we weren't competing for championships, but Paul Pasqualoni, we were consistently a top 25 team. We're better than that. And then we went 20 years since we fired Pasqualoni. We were a top 25 team one time prior to last year. And Nebraska, after Tom Osborne, they have Frank Solich. Frank Solich is good, but it's with Tom Osborne, we were winning all the national championships. They still haven't recovered. And James Franklin had limitations. There's no question about it. But you had the lead. You were the number 3 team in the nation playing Oregon with a lead in overtime 20 days ago. And now you're just going to be on Florida State, Jimbo Fisher. We won a national title with you, but we can do better. They haven't recovered. It's tough. It's a risky, expensive move.
Yeah, I like James Franklin a lot. I got to know him over the course of time, and I think he does a great job. I do think his numbers against ranked opponents, that was a problem, and I would imagine they were thinking about moving on from at the end of the season. And then he lost those 2 games by teams that he was favored by 20 points or more, which hasn't, I don't think, happened in the history since the FBS and FCS split. So that was problematic. The only way this makes sense to me is if this somehow gives him advantage in recruiting and the NIL portion of it, to make the move earlier rather than later, so there's some certainty with the kids that are there, the kids that potentially are coming in there. That's the only way that it makes sense.
But they won't know who the coach is.
They may not, but they know that the change is happening. And I understand what you're saying in terms of programs, but you look at a guy like Cignetti at Indiana, and I'm sure Penn State is saying it doesn't matter what we've always been or who our identity is because the NIL and the way transfer portal, the world's changed.
I do also think, Nick, you're downplaying Penn State a little bit. With Paterno, they were right there with Ohio State.
Yes.
And Franklin, to his credit, got them back. They hadn't been in the top 20 in 5 straight years before he got there, 4 straight years, something like that. And 7 of his last 9 years, they've been in the top 20, several of those times in the top 10. But like Coach said, he couldn't beat the great teams. And if I'm Penn State, I do want to – I'm looking at it I want to get to where Ohio State is. I think we can. I think Franklin clearly was a great recruiter, but in-game coaching seemed to be a problem when you can't beat any of these top teams.
1 interception away.
Still, overall, his record against great – now, I agree with maybe moving on. I just think this was the wrong time. I would have let him play out the rest of the season. And maybe you turn it around, whatever, but let it play out the rest of the season, then move on after.
Yeah, you better hire the right guy.
I agree, with the Indiana or.
Yeah, no, you can't.
Yeah, there's some guys that they've, I'm sure, identified.